Pretty good. How about you?
I mean, the best thing I can say about when we get to situations like this, to the weeks of the offseason, even just before the draft, there's a dead period. Not a whole lot happens. It's mostly, oh, we're gonna do this at draft time. We might do this after the draft. And other than that, it's pretty much there's not much going on until you get to mini camp, training camp, and stuff like that. But the news we had over the course of yesterday, because believe it or not, I was not going to do a show on the NFL World channel yesterday. I was like, okay, yeah, sure, there's stuff about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but it's like, okay,
Who
like there's
cares?
nothing interesting about it. It's a 1 year deal. It's not that much. And then it said, oh, they traded Stefon Diggs. So to explain, the Bills traded Stefon Diggs, and I said this yesterday. It feels like when Stefon Diggs doesn't want to be in an area, he kind of finds a way to get himself out of that area. Like he goes with saying, "I'm unhappy here. I don't want to be here," or the cryptic tweets every offseason, and then it just says, "Oh, he's gone." The exact picks that he was traded for, it was remarkably low. A second round pick and a sixth round pick. But it was essentially two trades because they also traded their seventh, their late picks later on in the draft. But excuse me, they also traded I believe, a second round pick in next year's draft. So very little was moved for this trade. It was interesting to see, I guess would be the best way to put it, because the dead cap hit, which is the money that you still have to pay the player, or the cap, which is the league, is like the Texans basically are paying him vet minimum. That's all they're paying him.
It's kind of like
Like
Russell Wilson.
exactly. Or Von Miller when he was with the Rams. They were paying him like $900,000. He was getting paid $15 million to go to Denver. It's the same thing. But his dead cap hit this year is $27 million, 27.85. He's getting paid $27 million to not play in Buffalo, to go and play in Houston. I'm like, not too bad. I get to go away from the nasty weather, go in a nice dome stadium, go play with a young quarterback, a young team, and legit wipe my hands of this situation. You still got to pay me. I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
But what were your thoughts when you first heard about this trade?
Well, I was happy because we don't, as a Patriots fan, I don't have to play him twice a year. So that's that's nice. It goes from a situation where we think we're gonna get uh, go 0-2 playing Buffalo this season to possibly splitting to possibly beating them twice. Um, I think with this move, and I'll have to ask you, do you think Buffalo's Super Bowl window is shut with this trade?
I think I think with when you have Josh Allen, it's not completely shut. But the wide receiver free agency class is terrible. It's not good. There's not a whole lot of people. So unless you plan on drafting some guys at wide receiver, which you really like, it's hard because like, you lost so many people this year. Like you get rid of Tre'Davious White, injuries, and he missed a lot of time anyway. You get rid of him. You lost your your best slot corner. I think he went to Jacksonville. You get rid of both of your safeties. Leonard Floyd is gone. Matt Milano broke his leg midway through the year, so who knows when he's coming back. So there is a bunch of holes. But it's kind of like I described it yesterday as the Chargers. The Chargers said, we're getting rid of Mike Williams, hoping he comes back. Then proceed to get rid of Keenan Allen and end up not getting Mike Williams anyway. So now you didn't just lose one guy, you lost two guys. That's the same situation here. No, it didn't result into, well, actually it did. You trade away Stefon Diggs, but you cut Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis didn't bring back. So now, let me see if I can find the roster of the wide receiver room.
It's not great.
For the Bills. It's not good. It's really not. It's Matt Collins, Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, Justin Shorter, KJ Hamlin, Andy Isabella, Tyrell Shavers, and Brian Thompson.
So Curtis Samuel's
That's
your number
bad.
one, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and he's not even an outside wide receiver. So you're going to say your best guy on the outside is Matt Collins?
Yeah.
That's not good. That's terrible. And they actually showed, besides Curtis Samuel and Matt Collins, I don't even think they put Andy Isabella on this graphic. Everyone else had like a total of like either 0 catches or like 200 yards. It's not very good.
Yeah.
So they're lucky this wide receiver class is really good because they're going to need to draft some.
And I mean, the issue with moving on from Diggs, sorry to cut you off, is you have so many holes on your team, on your roster. First off, to not even get a first round pick for Diggs is rough. But you let go of so many players at different positions. You can't just draft, receiver, even though that's what they honestly would need to do for that receiving core. They have so many other holes that they're not going to be able to fill all of them. So it's going to make a difference come next season. They're going to be a completely different team.
And I really think everyone said, well, Stefon Diggs' production went down. They changed offensive coordinators midway through the season. Of course they went down. Like, they emphasized running the football. They had Latavius Murray. They were going to run the football. You couldn't expect them to throw the ball as much because they saw it wasn't working. That Denver game, how many times did Josh Allen put the ball in harm's way in the Denver game? In the Jet game early in the year? They were inconsistent. They ran the ball, all of a sudden the offense worked. Or it worked better. Like, that's what they did. And, like, the offensive line is still good. The defensive line is still pretty good. The concern is this wide receiving group. Like, that's an issue for them. And when you're saying your 3 best receivers, or 4 best receivers are Matt Collins, Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, and Andy Isabella, that's not good. Now, maybe you can go try and get Hunter Renfrow. Maybe you can go and try and draft somebody, like a Keon Coleman out of Florida State. But it's not very good. And unless you're betting on a lot of guys stepping up, you're expecting a lot from not a very desirable class that you have.
And to look at it from Houston's side, not just from Buffalo's side, I mean, this takes them from, they were a playoff contender last year. I would say this makes them Super Bowl contender, especially with the other moves they made, getting Danielle Hunter, getting Stefon Diggs. That's huge. That puts CJ Stroud, and he's definitely going to be in contention for an MVP next season if he plays anything like he played last season. It's a great move. It really is for Houston.
For Houston, this is a top level move. I just like what they've done this offseason. They've done a very good job. Very competent. You bring in, okay, we have Will Anderson, great young talent. I mean, he played hurt last year. He was playing hurt, and he was still effective. You said, okay, we need to go get some guys. Daniil Hunter, let's go get him. D'Amico Autry, let's go get him. Yes, he's old, but he can still do things. He has some outside inside flex, so we can move him around. He'll be cheap. We're getting him from the Titans into the division thing. Let's go. And then they go and say, okay, let's go. And then they go and say, all right, let's trade for Joe Mixon. They do that. Devin Singletary, bye. Let's go get Joe Mixon. And they get him cheaply. And Joe Mixon's still a good runner. A little long in the tooth, but still very effective. Then you go and say, okay, let's go get Stefon Diggs, along with Tank Dell, along with, like, Dalton Schultz is a good tight end. Noah Brown's a good wide receiver. You got Nico Collins, the young, outstanding wide receiver. They got guys. I saw this thing, they said, we got 3 number ones. And I'm like, that's true. You do. You should win this division, and you should be immediate contenders for this thing. Because I don't know, like, obviously the Bills aren't going to be able to compete as well. They're going to have to play a whole different style. But besides the Texans, who do you think is going to beat the Chiefs?
The Jets?
Consistent.
I don't know.
The Jets?
Bengals, possibly. Maybe Bengals.
Jets, Bengals, Texans. Because there's nothing that tells me, at least in the AFC, Chargers, maybe?
No.
But that's it. Maybe Raiders, maybe they sneak one game out.
Ravens,
yeah. So it seems harder to deal with. All I'm saying is if you're the Bills, maybe you can get lucky. You get like Coleman from FSU, you get Xavier Worthy from Texas or Mitchell from Texas, but you just don't have anything. And the Texans, this was a complete steal. You got not young, but an older guy who can still produce.
Yeah,
and
he can definitely still produce. Don't be worried about his age, especially the fact that we played the Bills twice a year. Stefon Diggs he's a difference maker. So regardless of his age, like you said, he can produce.
I want to bring up the dead cap hit for Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs' dead cap hit is $31 million. That's not what the Bills are paying him. That is what they have to pay the NFL. He's actually getting paid $27.85 to not play for the Bills. So he's essentially making league minimum to go play in Houston. And next year, I think it's $18 million he's making from the Bills. So he's good. He's fine. And I think, again, like I said, you gotta make some development in this wide receiver room because it's dense in the free agent market. There's not a lot of movement in this wide receiver market right now. See what you can do, and maybe you don't completely fall on your face. All right. Now, how did you, when you saw that Hassan Reddick was traded, and then it comes out that he's traded to the Jets, what did you first think when you heard that?
Well, it's clear that the Jets front office is definitely all in this year. This is their year. their Super Bowl window is very tight because Aaron Rodgers. I don't know how old he is off the top of my head, but I know he's up there in
He's 40.
age. He's
He's
40.
40.
He can't have many years left to play. They're all in. It's this year, possibly next year. With this trade, it definitely bolsters up their defense. They have a great roster all around, and especially going back to the Stefon Diggs trade, they may not easily, but they will have an easier time to win this division. Um, yeah, so I just think it's a really good move for the Jets.
I think with the fact that Stefon Diggs got traded, it makes it easier, like for the Dolphins to try and win this thing. But the Jets, my question for the Jets is really how are they going to operate? Because I do like what they've done. They fix the offensive line. You bring in Tyron Smith. You trade for Morgan Moses. You go and Moses is, yes, he's older. He can play both sides. He's good at left tackle. He's good at right tackle. He's fine. He's okay. And then you still got Dwayne Brown, who is like 38 years old. You got guys for this offensive line. You hopefully won't see a bad offensive line. I'm just concerned about that run game for the Jets. Everything else seems good, like really good. It's the run game I'm concerned about because besides Brees Hall, who are you gonna trust? Israel Monaconda? Like that's all you got. That's not great.
Yeah.
So that's an issue.
My biggest fear for the Jets is not necessarily a fear, but their whole season is relying on Aaron Rodgers. He needs to be able to play well off this ACL tear. How he plays is going to make or yes. How he plays is it's going to make or break their entire season. So I think he's probably the most important. Well, he is the most important piece to this Jets puzzle. And he needs to play well. So regardless of Hassan Reddick, all of these moves that they made in these past 2 seasons, it's all on him. So even though, like you said, the run game, they're gonna have to get some depth probably in the draft. I think the biggest key is Aaron Rodgers.
Oh yeah, that's 100% true. But when I first heard about Hassan Reddick leaving, I was like, okay, we don't have to like as you said with Stefon Diggs of how okay we don't have to play him twice a year. It's the same thing I have with Hassan Reddick. I'm like, okay, we don't have to play him twice a year. Like if we have to play him, we play him once and we're good. Because he was the one guy that is like he could just destroy things. And he had since he was in Philadelphia. And I was like, I don't like playing him. The remarkable thing I think was the draft. They did it. The draft pick is a conditional third, with the condition of playing time and sacks. He has to have, I think, 10 or 10.5 sacks and 60% playing time to get it to a second round pick in 2026. So it's not this draft, it's not next draft, it's the draft after, which I found very interesting.
Yeah, I've found that draft picks are just, it seems like in the last few years, are just valued more. Like and like later round draft picks, people are just okay with, like Diggs going for mainly a second. That's the best that you're getting, and you'll see like this great safety on a team, and he'll get traded for like a 7th round pick, and you're like, why didn't my team do that? It's just a 7th rounder. But I just think draft picks are just valued more at this stage.
Well, it's like, and this is a great transformation from like the 90s. Draft picks were not worth a lot in the 90s. That's how like Jimmy Johnson made the Cowboys so good in such a short period of time. They used draft picks. And the way the draft pick formula worked back then was you could trade for a player. As long as you cut that player, you could get a draft pick for that player. Like you could go and cut a player at the end of the year that you got in a trade and get the draft pick from them. So that's how Dallas got so good so quickly, was they would trade, get picked for in a players, and then they would cut the players. That's what they did. This feels the same way. Except they're not cutting him. They're just more content with getting these picks. Like you said, that later round picks doesn't matter. I was kind of surprised that Philadelphia did this, though. When I said, I was thinking second round, possibly third, but I was expecting this draft. And then it turns out, no, we're not going to do that. This is a dramatic risk for them. They've gotten rid of some players here that you're like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Like, Brandon Graham's on his final year. This is his swan song. Fletcher Cox retired. Jason Kelsey is gone. You trade away Hassan Reddick. You're going to hope that Nolan Smith is good, because he hasn't played a whole lot. Josh Sweat is your best pass rusher. Like, that's a lot to bend on. And if you, it's not, when you get rid of a player, it depends on the position. Like, okay, yeah, we got rid of him, but did we really fall back? No, because of the position that he plays. This is okay, yeah, we really fell back. Because Hassan Reddick, I think, played 88% of the snaps last year. And now he's gone. So that's a massive risk for the Eagles to take.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Eagles. I don't know. I want to say that they're going to be more reliant on their offense next season, especially with the addition of Saquon. Um, yeah, I think they're. It'll be interesting to watch Eagles next season because I feel like they're going to completely change the way they play. Um, having Saquon, maybe relying more on the run that's not Jalen Hurts, especially with their demise at the end of last season. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Absolutely. I don't want to say it was interesting, because it's Jadeveon Clowney, so it kind of like, it is what it is. But he had a career
Yeah,
resurgence in Baltimore. I really thought, okay, this guy's going to Seattle. He's going to follow Mike McDonald, who revised his whole career, follow him to Seattle. It says, no, I'm going to sign with the Panthers. 2 years, $20 million, $24 million he can get in total in terms of his max. This I was interested by. I know he's from Carolina. He went to school in South Carolina, went and was there for many years. This was just a shocker. That's the best way I can put it.
yeah. One of those shockers. It's not like Stefon Diggs going to the Texans, but kind of like, oh, like, all right. Like you said, Jadeveon Clowney's not a splash signing. You know what I mean? He's an all right signing. He's a good signing. It's interesting for the Panthers because, I mean, they are rebuilding. They are still rebuilding. So to get a vet like Jadeveon Clowney, maybe he's a good locker room presence as well. Maybe that was something they probably need leaders in an organization. Um, that could play into it. I'm not sure, but he's a solid signing.
And this is what I love about NFL free agency is there's times you just go get a good player. It's not the most special player. It's not the guy that goes, you say, this guy is a difference maker. He's going to help us ride to a Super Bowl. That's not the goal. Let's just get a good player. And now we solve the issue. Like, he'll be good. He'll be consistent. We don't have to worry about it. If we choose to draft there, we can. But if we don't want to, or we don't want to sign anybody else, We can work with that. I just thought, oh, okay, he's going to Seattle. I thought that was like something similar with Patrick Queen. I thought was going to happen. He'll
Right.
just go to Seattle. He'll follow Mike McDonald, and that'll be it. So the fact that that didn't happen either was shocking to me. Next up, the Jaguars extend linebacker Foy Oluokun 3 years, $30 million in new money. Don't get this confused. You can't get this confused. When they say new money, all that means is we're putting more guarantees on this contract. That's all they're doing. Oluokun has been one of the better linebackers in the league, led the league in tackles. He's played 66 consecutive games. He's very dependable. Paying him this money, if he was not in Jacksonville next year, that would have been a shocker. You had to get this done. So, again, not a splash signing, but a good player? Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, this I saw, and I gotta be honest, Lucas, this made me very, very sad, I guess would be the best term. Because I have not liked what the Cowboys have done this offseason. This whole idea of we don't have to do anything. Or if we go get
Yeah.
somebody, it's because they're very cheap. Because that's what they
All
did.
in means
It's what
whatever
they
Jerry
do.
Jones thinks it means.
And it's not even Jerry. That's the frustrating part. Like, you know he's involved, but it's his son. And it's like, we can just draft. It's like, okay, you don't have enough draft picks. I don't know what you expect to do. My concern is more that just wait till after the draft and say, okay, we still have holes. Let's go sign people. It's like, we couldn't do that 2 months ago. Like,
Yeah.
what were we doing? But there's a rumor that came out that suggested the Cowboys and Ezekiel Elliott had mutual interest with each other. So I put this up and I said, Zeke Elliott and Cowboys reunion? A little higher register, but this would be the most typical Cowboys move ever. This is what they do. You played for us at one point, we sign you back. That's what they do. And it would be a disaster. Like, I like Zeke. I like him. And I know he's good friends with Dak. But at some point, we gotta make a decision here. He's 20, he's what, 28? He's
It's up
28,
there.
29. He doesn't
For a
have to,
running
he
back
doesn't,
that's like 60.
exactly. I mean, like, he's not Frank Gore. He's not Adrian Peterson where he can just keep on going until they're like 38, 39 years old. He's old. And he was not very good last year. He struggled. I mean, the only thing he does well is he doesn't get tackled for a loss very much. That's it. It doesn't solve the problems that you have in the run game. You gotta get better. And they haven't done anything to get better. And if they do this, they just show that they're not willing to get better.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys have their way, and they think that their way is the correct way. And like you said, it's more about having friends than making business decisions. You saw that with Jason Garrett. They kept him for as long as they did, and like you said, just signing old veterans that used to play for the Cowboys back for short term deals is usually is usually how they do things, and they don't like making splash signings. Very similar to the Patriots, hoping that we break out of that mold after we moved on from Belichick, but they need to make splash signings to be fair, and they had opportunities to do that this offseason, especially like when they weren't sure if they were gonna stick with Mike McCarthy. Could they get Bill Belichick? That was an option. That was an option on the table, but the Cowboys don't make those moves. To be fair, Zeke was good for the Patriots this past season. Ramondre took a step back for whatever reason, but Zeke did a good job filling that hole, and he was pretty solid for us. So it's not like if Zeke goes to the Cowboys, he's going to play bad football. I do get what you're saying. Like they need to stop putting band-aids on the problem and actually go out and fix it.
It's and I'm trying to say it like this. Like if you look at like Zeke's like yards per carry, it was 2.5. It was 2.5 yards a carry, which is not what you need. Tony Pollard was getting 3 yards a carry with a bad offensive line. Like I just want somewhat of a consistent run game at some point. It hasn't been consistent for 5 years, but it's like you said. It's not the fact that it's this issue of they don't want to like they don't want to go and say let's go win a Super Bowl, and it's also this whole thing. Well, let's rebuild. They want to do both, and it just kind of goes. That's what they do every time. It's frustrating because it's like, okay, are you gonna fire McCarthy? No. Are we gonna give McCarthy an extension? No. Well, what about Dak? Are we gonna cut Dak? No. Are we gonna give him a new contract? No. Are we gonna restructure him? Yeah, kinda. We'll move $4 million and that's it. Okay. Well, what about Zach Martin? Are we gonna restructure him? No, not really. Okay. Are we gonna give CD Lamb a new deal? Well, not right now. Okay, what about Michael Parsons? No, not right now. Let's go back. Dak Prescott. When are we gonna give him a contract? Maybe in August. Maybe next year. Might be easier for us to do it next year. Why? Why would it be easier next year? When he's a free agent, you can't do anything? Like, it's just these dumb decisions that they make. Like, legit, like, Stefon Gilmore played great last year for them. And they said, well, we'll see. We like what he did for us. But it was all past tense stuff. There is no, like, willingness to do it again. And it's frustrating. They purposely do this to create excuses and say, we don't know what to do. It's on Mike. Which I feel bad for him. I do. I like McCarthy. I think he's a decent coach. Is he the best coach? Nope. No, he's not. But is he a terrible coach? Nope. But at some point, you gotta go and give him some help. Help him. Help Dak. You know what they did this week? This is the last thing they've done in 2 weeks. They signed Chuma Adoga. That's what they've done. Haven't done anything. And they legit paid him vet minimum so it doesn't count against their salary cap. It's what they do.
Yeah.
It drives people
It's
nuts.
Cowboys way.
It's frustrating. And it's never going to get better. Because they're convinced that they said, well, we're going to have $90 million in cap room next year. What does that mean if you're not willing to spend it? Doesn't mean anything. All right. Get away from my rant here because I'm getting hot. My blood is boiling and it's not good. J.K. Dobbins is able to return to football activities. Dobbins was expected to be signed with the Chiefs. Turns out the Chiefs decided to go get Edwards-Helaire, sign him back. Dobbins is still a free agent. And the issue with Dobbins isn't his ability. He's a very talented player. He gets hurt a lot. But he's a good player. It's just he gets hurt so much that he's never there. And especially when you play in a team with like Baltimore, that you have all these guys, and now all of a sudden a guy goes down with an injury, it's not like you missed them at all. So you can just say, okay, goodbye. See you later. We'll draft another one. Because there's a ton of running backs in this class. So it's not really a big deal. You got
It, this
Trey
is
Benson.
this is yeah, exactly. This is why running backs have less value nowadays. I mean, it's such a hard position. Um, you're so vulnerable, and um, it's very easy to get injuries. I mean, like you said, like look at J.K. Dobbins' career so far. He had so much potential coming out of the draft. I remember, and he hasn't. It hasn't translated. Not to his fault. Just the injury bug has hit him. Um, he's a running back where he's got potential, but he's got to stay on the field, and he hasn't been able to do that. And like you said, it's best if he were to get signed, or if he were to be on the Ravens, that they have a carousel of running backs, and that's where he needs to be. If you were a team that would make a move for him, um, you would have to have multiple running backs, like to be able to rely on, because he needs to prove that he can stay on the field, and he just hasn't been able to do it.
Well, I think with J.K. Dobbins, if you sign him, you still have to say, okay, we're going to draft somebody. Like early. Like round 2 or 3, we still have to draft a running back. Just in case. Just in case, to make sure. And does it have to be like a Trey Benson? No, it doesn't have to be like a Trey Benson. You could wait and go with like someone else if you want. But like, it is good that he's returning to football activities. It's just he had 8 carries last year. 8. Because he got hurt in the first game. But on one of those 8 carries, he scored a touchdown. So it's still there. He's still good. It's these injuries that have plagued him through his career. Moving on to when I first heard that L'Jarius Sneed got traded a little over a week ago, I said, that's very interesting. Because now you're expecting Trent McDuffie to be your number 1 corner. Maybe you draft a Nate Wiggins out of Clemson next year, or in the draft, which would be a great pick for them, by the way. But I was like, he has to get paid now. He wants to be paid. Well, it was done. L'Jarius Sneed, 4-year deal, $76.4 million, becoming one of the highest paid corners in the NFL. And rightfully so. He's one of the reasons that the Chiefs have won 3 Super Bowls. Because of his play, the way he plays, and everything he can do. He can play inside, he can play outside, and he's locked down wherever he goes. He can do these things. And when the quarterback says, oh, I can't throw there, this is like when Deion Sanders was playing in the NFL. Oh, I can't throw there. Even though Deion's making it look like I can't throw there. Throw it over there. Even though the guy's not open. Throw it that way. I'm not throwing it there. That's the same thing I get with L'Jarius Sneed. I'm not throwing it over there. Throw it that way.
Yeah, it's definitely. It was surprising though. What'd you feel about him going to the Titans?
Well, at first, remember the rumors were that they had engaged in trade talks with the Colts. They had started
Yeah,
talking to the Colts, and then that fell through. When I first heard that he got traded for like a third, I was like, how bad was the Colts' pick then? Or was
yeah,
it
really.
like you said earlier about the Hassan Reddick thing? Picks are a bit more valued now, but I think it's more of we feel that we can just pick these guys out of the woodwork. Like this is not like linebackers, edge rusher, corners, wide receivers, quarterbacks in some instances, and we all know that's not true, but it feels like that's how people are operating. So I was shocked that it was the Titans. I was shocked, but I was.
They've
I
had a
knew he.
surprising offseason, the
Yeah, it
Titans.
was surprising. It wasn't like last year where we had like all these great like wide receivers getting traded, all these great players were getting traded. But this is definitely a shocker. I will say that. I'm more shocked about the draft pick they got in return than the trade.
Hmm.
That's what
I
I'll
think
say.
it's just one of those situations where I think teams knew that the Chiefs couldn't pay him, not that they didn't want to. So they probably knew that they could get away with giving them lesser picks because really the ball was almost in the Titans' court, not the Chiefs, because everyone was aware that the Chiefs just simply couldn't pay him, especially after the Chris Jones extension.
Well, it wasn't just that. They were so like cap strung by the Mahomes contract too. So they had to do something about Mahomes' contract to do something about Chris Jones.
Yeah.
To then say, okay, now we've done that. Now we're really cap strong. We gotta do something with Snead. What do we do? This is where I go back to like the difference between how some teams do it and how the Cowboys do it. The Cowboys easily could have just restructured people and made $60 million. They chose not to. The Chiefs don't have the money. They couldn't just restructure people. They could do it with Mahomes, but they couldn't restructure anybody else. So they had to let him go. So I think you're right about the draft picks. But I think there's a difference between, oh, I can't do something to, I just don't want to. They just couldn't do anything. And at least this gives them the ability to now do something that they weren't able to do before. All right, moving on to the NFL Competition Committee met this past week. The NFL bans the hip drop tackle. If you do, if you hip drop tackle somebody, which is the landing of the defender grabbing you and landing onto your legs and like kind of like swinging you down like that at an odd angle, 15-yard penalty, automatic first down. The owners unanimously agreed. This is what we're doing. But the NFLPA was like, no, we don't like this. I knew it was going to happen, but then I thought for a brief second, if the players could get into that room, they were going to say, well, why can't we do that? I understand it. Like, it happened to Tony Pollard in the postseason. It happened to Mark Andrews this season. It's frustrating. You're getting twisted up. It's one of those injuries that it's like, we know we can avoid it. How effective will this penalty be? How much can we avoid this penalty? It's just hard to give officials this much more responsibility when they haven't been doing good with their recent responsibility. That's
Yeah.
the best way I can
If
put it.
I were a fan, well, I am a fan, but a fan of the sport, I wouldn't be worried too much about it. I don't really foresee it really being called much at all. I mean, coaches and are going to try and do their best to train their players to tackle differently, but I still foresee hip drop tackles happening. I just don't see it being something that's really just going to be called very often, probably very rarely, and probably not in big game situations. So I wouldn't be worried about it too much.
Well, remember, this was like when they decided that we were going to start calling if running backs initiated contact with their helmet. Remember when they started to try to do that? It's like you can call that on every play because these running backs are so
Yeah,
small, they're getting hit in the head all the time. It is what it is. It goes with the position. I too think it won't be a big deal, but it's kind of like the players when they go and said, we don't want to play an extra game. Remember when they said that? Well, we don't want to play 18 weeks. And now they might
yeah,
have to do it again with 19 weeks.
too
So
bad.
it's like, we're making money, we're going to do this. It is what it is. People are accelerated by greed, is how it works. The NFL committee also met and changed and made a new kickoff rule. Now, I don't know. Did you see the video that the NFL put out about this?
No, I did not.
Or did you really understand it? Because it confused me a little bit.
Well, I know what I'm talking about the kickoffs.
Yes.
I know what it looks like. I know what it's supposed to look like. Um, but I didn't see any video that they put out trying to explain it.
So I actually went up on the NFL football operations thing because it is confusing. They're still expected to kick from the 35-yard line from where they normally kick. But the receiving team's players have to be on their 40-yard line. So it's
Yeah.
supposed to be like a much bigger difference. If you do a safety kick, it's like from the 20-yard line, like the normal. The players cannot move until the ball, I believe, is caught. Yeah, touches the
Yeah.
ground or a player in the landing zone area. That's the term they're using. The idea is to make it so it's more returns, less touchbacks. That's the idea. The zone is the 30-yard line. Um, okay, that's fun. The landing zone part. The landing zone is from essentially the 20-yard line to the goal line, but you have to line up like the 35-yard line. Is kind of confusing. If the ball goes out of bounds, short of the red zone, or the landing zone, I should say, it's treated like a 40-yard, like the ball's going to the 40. So that's still the rule part. And if not, if any kick lands into the end zone, it must be returned or it's downed and the touchback goes to the 20-yard line. So they've kind of moved it back 5 yards, which is
Wow.
better than what they had before, when they were going to try and move it up to the 30. Oh, actually, wait, no, right here it says if it hits the back of the end zone, it's moved to the 30. So that's a little confusing. And then it says for onside kicks, if you're down, you have to declare
Yeah,
to
they
an
have to
official.
declare it,
You have to declare it.
which just eliminates declare to the official or declare in general. Because if it was declared maybe to the official, they could still do. Well, no,
It says
they wouldn't be able to do uh, disguised onside kicks anymore because if all your players are up there, you can't.
it says
It win every time.
when fourth. This is the term they use. It says from the fourth quarter begins, the team trailing has the opportunity to declare for an onside kick to the officials. So I'm guessing they'll do the thing like when we declare for an eligible offensive lineman. I'm guessing it's something similar to that. I guess we'll see it during the year. I don't exactly know what that
Yeah.
entails.
I mean, to me, the kickoffs were boring last year. I mean, pretty much every kick just went out of the end zone. So if they're trying to spice it up and not eliminating kickoffs completely, I'm here for it. It'll be interesting, and I'm glad that they are putting some work into trying to make it the play more interesting, and I mean, I guess it being safer because we want that. So, um, I think it's good. I don't have an issue with it.
I don't have an issue with it. What I like that the NFL did, they actually consulted all the NFL special team coaches. So this is the special teams coaches' idea that they've kind of put together here. I know they've been talking to Bones Fossil of the Cowboys. He's really been the figurehead of this. I don't know why, but that's what they've been doing. And he was saying, like, look, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to increase this and make this again very viable part of the game because it hasn't been. Like, no one's taking this as seriously, and people are losing money because it's not. They can get anyone to do this. Well, now it actually kind of
Right.
forces people to attempt to do this and say, okay, this is important. Let's try this. But the final thing that they mentioned, this is the final thing they mentioned at the committee, more NFL replay. Now, we were talking about this off camera, and we said this might not make a big deal. It won't be exactly a big deal, but at least it's a step in the right direction where we're saying, okay, we can review it. I would much rather say, let's say we threw the ball out of bounds. We're trying to see if it's intentional grounding. Instead of throwing the flag right away, or instead of just doing it, let's huddle up. Let's give New York a chance to look at it. And New York says, okay, yeah, it's intentional grounding, no one's in the area. Ball doesn't get past the line of scrimmage or something like that. Then they go and be like, okay, throw the flag. Boom. Nope, it's not intentional grounding, guys, right there, we're good. Okay. And then you can just step out and say, after review, it wasn't intentional grounding, next down. That to me simplifies
Plays and refs on the
whether they
field
do
that
that or not.
they
But to
seem
me,
to take the
that's
calls
the
kind
best
of
way to do it.
personally, like the calls that they make on the field.
It's like I was watching an interview a number of months back, and we talked about this of Dean Blandino, who works for the NFL and was a head of the officials for a long time. He was the guy after Mike Pereira. And he was there, and he was saying, well, the reason they don't want to use replays is because we want to try and trust what the officials are seeing, because we don't want to undermine the official. I'm like, but if the official's messing up, we're not undermining him. Wouldn't we just be getting the right call? Isn't that what we're trying to do? Well, no, that's slowing the pace of the game. Well, at some point, we're going to slow the pace of the game. We have to. We slow the pace of the game anyway. So why is it a big deal? It's just a bad excuse. We slowed the pace of the game anyway. It's not good, but we don't want to do this. We're tired of bad officiating. The best example I can give you, the game against the Cowboys and the Detroit Lions. It's the best one I can give you. You see one of the offensive linemen try to come into the game and say, look, I'm eligible. And then you do see two Lions players go to the official, but that's still not an excuse. The guy's running in. He's been doing it all game. Like, how can you mess that up so badly? And for you to say, well, we're not going to call it. It's like, it's not exactly the best thing for you to have done. Let's do this. Let's replay it. Oh, okay, it's visible. We see it. All right. It might undermine the official, but it might also force these officials to get better, which is what I think they don't want to do. because it's like you look at the NBA's officials. Yeah, there's times that you can see things, and like, of course, that's normal. Do we really have to worry though? Like, if you're missing calls, we're gonna fix it. At some point, we must fix this. That's the best way I can say it. All right, Lucas, do you have anything else before we get out of here? All right. So this is the end of the episode of the What to Play podcast. We thank you for joining us, and we will see each other next time. Peace.